Well, hey guys, welcome to the Man Talk Podcast. I'm Vince Miller, your founder and host. Good to be with you today. We are still continuing in our book called 30 Virtues That Build a Man. And it's exciting to be in this book. I hope you'll pick up a copy of it at beresolute.org/30. That's THIRTY. Today we're in the topic on page 50, which is motives. And I'm joined today by Tyler VanEps. Thanks for being with us, man.
For sure. Good to be here.
So motives, interesting. I think the way to really dig after kind of a heavy topic like this is to ask kind of a lighthearted one to kind of get us going, because I tell you, we don't like sometimes the motives that we see even in our own selves, but we do have motives. We have desires deep down. So, Tyler, I want to know this. What is your absolute favorite meal?
Absolute favorite meal?
Yeah, if you could have a meal right now, like right now in this moment, what would be your favorite meal?
So middle of July, just coming off a whole week of the 4th, I just love a good burger on the grill. Mm-hmm. For side, I would take some asparagus.
Really?
Lightly salted.
Okay.
Yep.
There you go.
And then 4th of July, I always think of watermelon. Just a nice, ripe watermelon. So that's what's on my mind right now. Ask me again in an hour, I might say something different.
Yeah, exactly. Who doesn't like a juicy burger, so on a grill? So there you got it. So, I have my own favorite meal, and I think my own favorite meal is like that perfectly cured filet mignon that has been like...
That's the other direction I was going.
Really? Like marinate that thing for 28 days, quick fire it on a grill, throw it in an oven, keep it warm, and then throw it on a plate. And if I can cut it with a fork, man, my glands are salivating, right? Like, and there's something about that. Like, if you know what I'm talking about, like, there's certain kinds of things that draw out desire out of us. That's pretty powerful. And I think that men fail to remember that it's okay to have desires, right? It's okay to have motives. They can be comfortable. There's good and bad ones, of course, and there are certain things that we desire that draw out bad motives, and there are certain things we desire that draw out good motives, and it's okay to desire a great steak or a good hamburger, right?
Absolutely.
I know so. So, when you think about your motives, do you think... And this is a pretty heavy jump-in question, right? Other than the hamburger question, right? But it's a pretty heavy jump-in question.
My second favorite meal?
Okay, go for it.
I was going to go with the filet mignon.
That
Was the one.
So I think it's heavy just to jump into this, but I think it's a little easier for us to see the kind of the motives and the desires of other people, unfortunately, isn't it? Than it is to see our own. Right?
Or assume the motives of
other
other
assume
people.
The motives. There we go. Assume the motives of another person. Let me just jump in and ask you this then. Is it okay for us to judge the motives of another human being? What do you think?
Judge, no. Assess or observe, yes. I think even this morning as I'm leaving the house, just trying to understand as I'm communicating with my wife, what are her motives here? I think once I begin to make a judgment, that's when I begin to separate, the context that we're having the conversation in, and I can go down a route of communication that could be completely biased based on that judgment. So that's probably the direction I would lean. I'd love to hear your opinion on it too.
I think that's pretty good. I think, it's interesting, like to make a judgment about a whole person based upon a single interaction is really hard, isn't it? Yeah. Like, I think like in today's world right now, of course, some people are hearing about this, but we have a little bit of an issue at Willow Creek where Bill Hybels, who is their founding pastor, steps aside. There's kind of a lot circling around his stepping down. There's some alleged things that have supposedly happened, right? Yeah. And it's easy for me, way over here, not in South Barrington, Illinois, to make judgments about Bill, right? Which may not be true. But it does cause me, when I see kind of some of these things happen, to assess, like you used the word, right? To assess my own lifestyle and to assess what parameters maybe I need to have in place in life. And so those are two very different things. It's one thing to make an eternal judgment about somebody, right? And it's another thing to actually assess or judge in a very different way even my own heart. So yes, I think in some sense, in some situations, we are called to both judge, but maybe not make eternal judgments about other people.
Yeah. It's a good distinction.
Right,
I
right,
like that.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So this brings up a great point, though, and I think you've already made it. And it's that, man, it's a lot easier to do this with other people and really difficult to do with ourselves, right? Like, why do you think we have such a hard time with judging our own motives? Why do you? I mean, because I think you're kind of confessing that, right? Why is it hard for you to judge your own motives?
Well, I think to some extent there's always a level of just internal tension of wanting pure motives and really trying to be in tune with a certain level of self-awareness of why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And I think that comes a little bit naturally. When you see other people, it's easier to kind of, I guess, create a more linear situation or static situation for perhaps what they're thinking and what their motives are. When you're inside your own head, 100% of the time, there's just a whole wide world of what those motives might be. So I think that's one of the things that I wrestle with in terms of my motives is as I step into a decision or as I step into a relationship or something like that, it really is, what are my motives? Let's start on this side, and then let's measure everything in between.
Right, right. And I think, do you think that, let's just take men in general, okay, because we're talking to men, right? So let's just take men in general. I think it's interesting that sometimes I just don't take the time to reflect really on what my motives are. I really don't think about why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. I just do them, right? I don't do them with the conscious effort of kind of going like, yeah, I want to get ahead in this moment right now. Now there's something subconsciously where this behavior comes out. I'm not really thinking about my motives necessarily. So like, for example, let's just take a relationship with our wife. You know, something happens in relationship to my wife. I attack right back because there's some motive to self-preserve, right? Yeah. Or I'm hurt by kind of a dynamic at work. So to self-preserve, I juxtaposition my behavior, my work patterns around a motive that I might not even be conscious about. I'm trying to self-preserve in that motive. We do this, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You've probably seen it happen in other people for sure. And we're easy to... it's easy to judge them in that moment, but I just don't think we take the time to reflect like you're saying. Like we don't really think about why we're doing the things that we're doing all the time. And, you know, this brings into perspective the fact that I believe Christ does call us to be conscious of these things. Here's the funny thing is I think, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that we become most conscious of our motives when we really screw something up. Because I think it forces us to reflect on why.
Yeah.
Ever screwed something up in relationship with your wife and think, how did I get myself here? And then you reverse engineer it only to realize that, oops, it's my own fault.
Yes.
You ever done that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
All the time. Okay, tell us one situation where that's happened.
Oh, my goodness.
Just give me one.
This morning.
Okay.
Oh, my goodness. I'm coming from, amazing wife of 7 years, Shelly.
Yeah.
We've got 3 little girls, and we've got a 4th on the way.
Wow.
So
you're really good at intimacy here at your house, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm very conscious of my motives in that. So. Procreation.
Yeah. That's
Procreation
right.
only. And so we're getting ready to leave the house this morning, and we've had a busy few weeks. We had around the 4th of July. I keep talking about the 4th.
Yeah.
It's a big deal around our family with cabins and lakes and stuff like that. But over the past few weeks, it's just gotten so busy. We're out of our own house for like 10 days in a row, just staying at cabins, staying at lakes and stuff like that. We finally get back. We just celebrated our oldest birthday on Saturday, and then we did something again on Sunday. So we're just in this midst or this streak of really, really busy, really chaotic, and hadn't taken the time to really just slow down over the past few days. We've just been mentioning, we need a date night. We need a date night. We got to take some time apart. We got to take some time away from the girls and stuff like that. And all I got in my mind this morning is, okay, I got to go to this podcast with Vince. I'm like, hey, this is cool. I'm excited. This is something I absolutely love. I love the goal of really reaching men. I think every pain point in my life that I've experienced as a man, whether it's going into your book or reading in the podcast, I get impacted by it. And so that's what's on my mind this morning. I'm thinking external. I'm thinking, all right, I got to start the week off right. I've got some of these things to do. The girls woke up a little early, cut my quiet time short. I'm just recognizing the further and further I get into my morning and the more and more I'm getting ready to leave the house, impatience inside of me is just, it's gnawing. And so I lose my cool. I'm like, I got to go. Like, I got things to do. I got places to be. We're starting the week. The weekend's over. And man, my wife just sunk. I mean, you could just tell that the thing that she wanted more than anything was just connection. And so for me, I realized really quickly, like, all right, I got to slow down. As much as I want to kind of have my own time over here to prepare for the day, to spend in some quiet time to do this, like, my wife needs me right now. And she is, obviously going through all the hormones of pregnancy and stuff like that. And so, yeah, we had a crazy morning even as we were leaving the house today.
It's funny, isn't it? It's just interesting how God is just like teaching us along the way. And usually from us blowing stuff, he draws attention to the need to reflect on what really is driving us. Is it us driving us? Is it him driving us? Is it situations that are driving us? What are the motives behind it? I just don't think we as guys slow down enough to really think about this, to purify our motives for the day and in each moment throughout the day. This is what I love about the text this week in this chapter. So it's Matthew 6. It's the Sermon on the Mount. Yeah. Jesus goes for the jugular, right? Sometimes. Here's what he says. He says, beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them, for you will have no reward from your Father who's in heaven. So he goes right after it. The Sermon on the Mount is just some hardcore, good old-fashioned preaching, right? And he says, thus, as you've just heard this, when you give to the needy, sound no trumpet before you as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may be praised by others. Truly, I say to you that they have received the reward. Man, I love this text, and here's why I love this text, is I think Jesus is teaching us that there's actions and behaviors that people will see, right? Because he's talking about these people who come to the temple to give their stuff into the trumpet. So people in their day, when they came to the temple, would actually throw their coinage into what looked like kind of a trumpet kind of thing, and it would make a clangy kind of noise, right? Yeah. You see where I'm getting at?
Just like the toll booths, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly like those toll booths. Yeah, like a Chicago toll booth. I have gotten a few tickets there, man, because you're like, I got no change, So that's a different kind of trumpet, though. It's very costly, by the way. So anyway, they're throwing stuff into these trumpets, right? And it would make a clangy noise. But they're also talking about hypocrites, right? That would come on a stage. When a hypocrite, that's an actor, would come on a stage, they would blow trumpets to sound his coming onto a stage, to draw attention to this prima donna, And I think that Jesus is going look, you can do things so that other people can see them, but your only reward is other people see it. He's like, when you give so God could see it. And what he's saying is there's something deeper that God sees that mankind cannot see. And that's the motives for why you're doing it. A lot of people, I think, give completely for the wrong reasons. So, and of course, Jesus is relating this to money and giving in the church. And he's like, some people give just reluctantly. Some people give so they can put their name on a building. Some people give so that they can absolve sin. But then some people give for just pure motives because they love God. And there's different delineations of that motive, different levels of maturity, I think, of that motive. Yeah. And I think this is the struggle, because I'm going to dare to say something pretty bold, but I actually believe when we get to heaven, God is not going to hold us accountable based upon our action. I don't believe that. I don't believe he's going to hold us accountable based upon our action. He's going to hold us accountable based upon Christ's action on the cross, which is pretty profound and pretty life-giving. But I do think what he's going to look at when he gets to heaven is the purity of our motive. Yeah. He's going to go, did you do it for the right reason, not the wrong reason? And this is where desire is this very internal thing. It's very spiritual, this supernatural thing. And I think as men of God, we need to take more time to think about why we do the things that we do, because that directs the path of our life. Yeah. You know Simon Sinek, right? Yeah. He talks about the power of why, it's a great talk, but
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Like, the power of why is something we can apply to every part of our life. Like, why do you start the day the way you do? Why did you start today the way you did? Did you do it to bring honor to God or to bring glory to yourself? And it's very different for each and every one of us, but we really got to evaluate those motives. So how do you evaluate your motives? Like, what is at least one thing you do on a semi-regular basis, Tyler, to just evaluate your motives?
Yeah. It's crazy that you talk about just, I think pace is such a challenging thing for really assessing our motives, really diving into self-awareness. For me, morning is kind of my time. And so when my little girls wake up a little early and kind of interrupt that, that's tough. But for me, I try and journal a good bit. I tend to be more of a thinker and processor than a feeler. And so for me to really access that and allow that, I've found to be a pretty powerful tool to actually help expose some of my motives. Because when I just apply a logical, rational machine gun like test or lens to my motives, I usually end up kind of just chopping it up, dissecting it, and then I can look at it in certain ways. But being able to sit down, just be in kind of a contemplative state, pray, and then I just start to journal. I write one word in the middle. I kind of do the mind web thing, except just based on my emotions. So I write one word in the middle, and then I let that kind of expand out to just start to give this visual of where God's leading me, what the Holy Spirit's highlighting in terms of my heart, my emotions, and my motives. So that's one thing I try to practice pretty regularly.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And I think for the thinkers out there, that idea of like journaling is a fantastic idea. It probably gets their mind to kind of slow down, reflect, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know. I think it'd be a great activity for some guys, and for other guys who are hyper relational, maybe they need just some accountability in their life to someone to speak back to them, right? So maybe it's not journaling for the hyper relational guy. For him, it's, I need brotherhood like this, right? I need someone speaking into me. Hey, can I run this idea by you? And someone asking them the hard question, why did you do the thing that you did?
Yeah.
Might be enough to stir the motive. So, yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
How do you do it? I'm curious. So I give my thing. I want to hear you.
One of the ways that I definitively do it is I've got some guys in my life, to be quite honest, that I can be a little bit open with, that I can run thoughts by. I got 2 or 3 people. I was just sitting with one this morning that I could sit down with, and I could say, what do you think about this? And then they could say back to me, here's what I would do, here's what I would not do. And for me, it's hard, to kind of sometimes figure out my motives. I think sometimes we're perplexed by them. We don't quite understand them. We're not comfortable with them. And we may not even know where we stand with certain things. Like, for example, let's say if I'm facing a little bit of a crisis in my life, I may feel like I'm walking through a cloud. It's very, very foggy. It's very deep. I can't even see the steps in front of me. And so I'm going to turn to another brother and say to me, have you been in this situation before? Help me to understand how I feel right now, because I'm not even sure with how I feel about the situation right now or what to do with it. And I'm looking for them to help me to take kind of that next step so that I can discern my motives along the way, because I'm sure there's a motive path that I'm going to take through a particular struggle. So that's one of the things that I do. The other thing that I think is very important to do is, to be quite honest, to get into God's word all the time. These little daily devotionals that I write for these guys, the Men's Daily Devo, which, by the way, you guys should sign up for if you don't get it. I wrote one today based upon my motives. Seriously, I was talking about work and why I do the things that I do and how to find passion in life. Today, that's what I wrote about. And I found that it's a great way for me to process in front of God's word. Just take a single verse, stew on that verse, and allow that verse to be the theme for my day, and allow that truth to just ooze into me. And then believe that truth over my own passions and desires. And I'm talking about bad human passions and desires. And I think men really should do more of that, to be quite honest. So there's 2 things I did, right? Brotherhood and Bible, which brings us right back to 30 virtues that build a man. That's what I designed this book for, Tyler. So
I got mine.
Yeah, see, you got yours. And I think these would be great for other men and other groups. So anyway, with that, guys, I want to really encourage you to pick up a copy of this book, 30 Virtues That Build a Man. And build those two things in your life, Bible and brotherhood. And I promise you, if you do it, it'll reorient your motives. If you just really place yourself in front of a relationship with God along the way and other men. So guys, pick this up today at beresolute.org/30. That's THIRTY. Tyler, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you right back here next time on another edition of Man Talk.